Hello, everybody, and welcome to the show. This is Multifamily Chronicles, and I am your host, Adrian Danila. My guest today on episode number 19 is Nicholes Oswald. Nicholes is a regional property management for RPM based in Chicago. Welcome to the show, Nicholes.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
We had some technical difficulties right before the show. Thank you for being patient with me, Nicholes. I had to say that to the audience really quick. So we're a little behind on recording, but I'm glad you waited for me. Let's start by introducing yourself to the audience. Well, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, your background, and some of the great things that you're doing at RPM today?
Yeah, absolutely. I'd love to. So my background, like I feel many in our industry, I sort of fell into the property management industry. After graduating college, I had worked at Marriott International throughout college and ended up staying on with them in a full-time role post-college, and always thought that I would just stay in the hospitality industry. I really enjoyed it. I liked the customer service. I liked the training. I liked traveling at the time, which I still like traveling. So the hotel discounts were really great, and just always thought I would kind of work my way up in the hospitality industry. Fast forward to the recession in 2008. I was a catering sales director for Marriott, and for those that don't know, I mean, the hotels were hit pretty hard in the recession, and a lot of positions were eliminated and centralized and streamlined, and I unfortunately found myself without a job. I had a friend that worked in property management out in California, and she, I reached out to her, was like, what should I do with my life? I thought I would be in hospitality forever. And lo and behold, she's like, oh, you need to come into property management. It's a great industry. There's a lot of parallels. The main difference is that people don't leave as quickly as they do in hospitality. So that's kind of how I fell into it. I started as a leasing consultant for Amly, and ended up that first role. I was told a couple of weeks after starting that the property was being sold. And as someone that had just went through a layoff, I felt very insecure with my job. So I started looking. Got a position with Village Green doing leasing, and then worked my way up with them. I went through their manager and training program, which was, I think, really instrumental in my future success, and kind of have worked my way up from there. I've had a variety of roles, managed all different asset classes, large portfolios, smaller portfolios, urban, suburban, pretty much everything. The only thing I haven't done is strictly affordable housing, but I have in Chicago, we cannot discriminate based on source of income. So I have worked with subsidized housing, just not a strictly affordable community. So that's kind of my story in a nutshell.
So it's very interesting that you mentioned how you fell into the industry, how you started a new job in the industry, and then a few weeks later, here you go, the properties for sale. This is very common for a lot of us that kind of fell into the industry. They had to deal with this shortly after they started with, management change or, a property changing hands, ownership changing. And then you overcame all those challenges, and now you're a regional property manager. A lot of the individuals professionally in the industry, they're at a site level. Mm-hmm. I think they want to advance, they want to move up. And obviously there's not really a written recipe to how to advance. One of the things that I do on a show here is to ask my guests, tell us a few things about how, what are the few things that helped you advance, get you where you are today? What are a few things that, you think some of your strengths or some of the things that you did really well to help you get where you are today? I'm asking the questions because I want for those that, want to follow the same path to just kind of have a walk path, not kind of go in blind and not actually know, hey, what can I do instead, like trial and error with everything. So would you like to share a few of the things that really helped you throughout your career to get where you are today?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, definitely the first thing that comes to mind is the manager and training program that I went through at Village Green. And I know you're super passionate about training yourself, and we might talk more about this further in this show, but their manager and training program is a 6-month long program. You're partnered with a property manager. So it's to get you from like a leasing position or an assistant position into a property management, like a proper community manager, property management role. So you're partnered with well, at the time, I don't know if things have changed because this was quite a number of years ago, but you are partnered with an existing community manager who's also already gone through this program. And it's 6 months. You meet with a cohort of other manager and training candidates. Once a week, you go through everything: budget, financials, contract negotiation, resident issues, legal issues. And so every week you meet and there's different speaker. And then at the end of the program, you're expected to present to the regionals as well as the vice presidents and talk about the things that you've implemented at the community and what changes, positive changes you've made at the community. So it's really, you're selling what you've done and what you've accomplished, which I am not someone that enjoys public speaking. So that was really nerve-wracking for me to have to get up in front of all these people and talk about my accomplishments in this program. One of my major accomplishments at that particular community that I was at, which had previously had really high delinquency, was getting the delinquency down to 0 for 1 month, which was pretty substantial improvement in the community. So it really taught me to be able to speak to my strengths and what I was able to accomplish. I think a lot of times, and this is beyond our industry, it's, I think, just in general, it's hard to talk about what you've done and what you've accomplished and what changes you've implemented and how has that resulted in communities being better, more efficiently run. And to be honest, it's, sometimes hard to brag about yourself or talk about yourself in that light. So it was a good experience to learn how to really put words to what I had accomplished at this community and how I had accomplished it and why it was important to the community and to the ownership group. So that's definitely one area that helped me. And I'm really passionate about training. I think it's so important for people to understand, why do we need to stay in budget? Why do we need to collect, as much rent as possible? Why is delinquency an issue? If people don't understand the why, then it might never click for them. So that's definitely, I would say, the number one thing that comes to mind. I would also say, not necessarily pigeonholing yourself into, a career path or a role, or the traditional path. I will quote, and I'm probably going to totally misquote it, but Rebecca Smith, and I'm totally blanking on her company name right now, but she had said on a Renter Obsessed podcast how you have to be able to make your own path in the industry, especially when you're, a maintenance tech or a leasing consultant and you don't really want to go in the traditional, like, leasing consultant to APM to property manager to regional to VP. You don't need to follow the traditional path. You need to figure out what you're passionate about and how you can do that, in a role that maybe isn't even created yet. If you're passionate about something, figure out a way to make it happen. And I think for me, that was, something that prior to my previous role with RPM, which I was managing director with Pioneer Acquisitions, a small owner operator in Chicago, I had thought, I was just going to go, property manager to regional to VP. And having a completely different experience with Pioneer, where I started as a director of leasing and revenue and oversaw their entire leasing portfolio and marketing strategy, really taught me that there just are so many paths in this industry, and you can't discount, a smaller company or a bigger company. You keep an open mind and figure out what it is about your day-to-day job that really lights a fire in you, and then figure out a way to do that more.
I love this forge your own path, pretty much, is what you're saying, right?
Yeah.
Am I wrong about saying that?
You're on the mark.
Yeah, create your own path. I'm all about creating your own path, because I try to follow the classic technician, groundskeeper, technician, punch, service manager. I did follow it, but then there were things along the way that really helped me, like stepping aside and just kind of building things. Not necessarily wasn't everything linear. So those are great pieces of advice. Thank you for sharing with us.
Yeah.
Now, Nicole, a good part of a good portion of a regional manager job is being very strong on financials. So a lot of your job, right? Correct me if I'm wrong. It's really analyzing, focusing on financials of the assets, correct?
Correct.
So this brings me to my next question. Next question is, we as an industry, we're lacking. We're not doing a great job at financial and management training for service managers. So I want to talk a little bit about this, right? I don't know if you agree with this statement, but for the most part, there's not a industry-wide formal training for service managers to understand the function of management, how to become a management, the difference between a manager and a technician. The jobs are not really overlapping, it's just a little overlap. And then the financial part of that manager's job. So do you agree that we need to do a better job at that as an industry?
Absolutely. I do. I mean, it's definitely something that certain companies do better than others, obviously. But in general, I think service managers, even technicians, they should know what the budget is and they should understand the why. Back to my point earlier, if people understand the why, it's easier for them to, I don't want to say comply, but it's easier for them to work within the framework that they're given, as opposed to just giving someone framework and saying, okay, you need to stay within this framework, and giving them nothing else. Explaining the why and the how to get there, or how, if you're over budget, how can we save money? Or if we have room in the budget for, a repair to a roof, what is getting their input and walking them through the process of getting bids and understanding the budget, I think is definitely lacking in our industry. And I think it's important because, like I said, the more people know, the more they understand, the better they're equipped to not only do their job, but do a better job. And I think, traditionally, service technicians and service managers probably aren't the most number-oriented people. They use a different part of their brain, just like I probably couldn't do half the things that they do. But if they understand the basics, I think not only it empowers them, but it also allows them to have those conversations and to bring up things that, a manager might not necessarily even know about, and be able to talk through that with their manager and understand, okay, we do have a budget, but this, this one project over here that wasn't budgeted for, but is absolutely critical to the operation of the property. How can we get that project approved and maybe save in some other areas? And I think, they can be trained on that. They don't need to like suddenly become numbers people, but they can at least learn the basics of what the budget is and how to best accomplish the goals of the owner.
You said something great earlier on. You said allows them to have conversations. One of the things that I read, I think at the time I was a punch technician, a make ready. Grace Hill was just like at the very beginning, I think it was like 2005. And I read on one of the blogs on Grace Hill, someone said right there was an article, someone said, it's very important that all of you to understand and speak the language of business. So for us as coming, through the maintenance ranks, it's very important to be able to relate, to speak, to articulate, to speak the type of language that people in management, roles like regional managers, even managers, site managers, they could understand. So use the type of language that relates, helps them understand, speak their language. Basically, it's not that you don't have a legit concern or a legit request, it's just how you package the request. So then the person you're, communicating to, has an easy understanding. It's like, yeah, this makes sense for us, but be able to quantify, be able to put it, package it in a way to where, management says, yeah, I think we understand what the issue is and we understand why we need to spend the money.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, also even just the basics of, return on investment. So there's obviously, repairs and projects that are needed just to keep the community operating at peak performance. But then there's other projects that are value adds for the community, the residents, the owners, and being able to speak to that piece of the puzzle is really critical. And I there's been very few service managers over the course of my career that have been able to really articulate that. And the ones that do, just, they're like gold. You don't want to lose them.
If I had to guess, probably some of them are, they moved up into regional roles or multi-site roles already because they had that ability to communicate and articulate, at a management level.
Yes.
The issues that were the challenges they've been having or the needs of the property. My next question, Nicole, is related to your background. So you have a fairly extensive background in hospitality. Now, hospitality and multifamily, they're somehow related. They're from the same family, I will say. So there's quite a bit of overlap, but then also there's differences, right? So what I want to ask you, Nicole, is that what do you think are a number of things that we in multifamily could learn from the hospitality industry, implement to make our industry more successful, better?
Yeah, I think, look, housing's been around forever, right? But in some sense, the way that it is now is different than even 100 years ago. Hospitality has the benefit of time. They've been a similar industry for a longer period of time and had similar goals, and just they've been able to really perfect their craft. Their customer service, for the most part, obviously, there's always the one-off that is not great at customer service, but customer service is so important to their industry. If they don't have good customer service, they don't survive. Whereas for housing, that's definitely, I think, a newer concept. 100 years ago, I don't think people were really too concerned with the customer service of their landlords. They just wanted a roof over their heads. But things are changing, and people have higher expectations than they ever have. So customer service is definitely something that I think we, are behind the hospitality industry, and we are going to need to catch up very quickly. They live and breathe customer service. It's drilled into you from the day you walk in the door on your first day on the job, and the training that they provide and giving employees the why is really something that we need to figure out a way to implement in our industry, in my opinion. They also do a really great job of setting customers' expectations with their brand strategy and their brand standards. And again, it's not just the logo, it's everything. I was staying in a hotel recently, and the technician was, they have, specific like hour by hour tasks of what they're responsible to do. Now, they don't have maybe as many emergencies as we have on the multifamily side, but, at 8 o'clock in the morning, they're wiping down all the windows. They're, checking the pool to make sure that, the chemicals are correct. And there is a very regimented, I think that's the right word, schedule for their day and what they're responsible, what their touch points are. And that's not just on the service side of things, it's also on the front desk. There's, checklists and deposits that you need to reconcile. And there's just very, very specific roles. And it all kind of goes, while it is a task, in my opinion, it also is a brand strategy. And it's, at a higher end hotel, you're going to have the windows cleaned more than you are at, a budget hotel. But there are always these strategies that their teams can fall back on and know exactly what's expected of them. And their guests can walk into a hotel and know, okay, I'm going to expect free breakfast at this hotel, or I'm going to expect beautiful flower arrangements at this high end, downtown luxury hotel. So it's the experience and the experience that you get as an employee. It's the experience you get as a guest of the hotel, and they just do it so well. And we don't really. There's some communities and some companies that do, but I would say the vast majority do not. And then the other thing is centralization and automation. They don't have the reporting that we have, where my team spends an hour on a Monday putting together a bunch of reports for the owners or for myself. Everything is automated from hotels, just everything. And centralization is also key because it allows the people that are there day in, day out on site, for lack of a better term, to really focus on their craft and what they're responsible for instead of, doing everything. I think now more than ever, the site teams are so overwhelmed with all the responsibilities. Technology is definitely catching up for us, but there is also so much technology and they all don't talk great yet. And some days I honestly think that it was easier when I was doing paper leases and paper guest cards and paper work orders back when I first started in the industry, because you weren't dealing with integrations and passwords getting lost and, oh, this person, their punch didn't record. It's a lot. And so the more that you can take off the plate of the site team by automating and centralizing certain functions, I think, that's something that hospitality has really, really done a phenomenal job at.
I actually think that we're currently seeing trends in centralization and automation, automating the systems in multifamily. I'm seeing, I won't say it's a trend, it's a beginning of a trend. I'm seeing a lot of activity on those fronts, which is very promising. It's very exciting because we should be catching up with times, not just with times, but we should be catching up with other industries that have proved they have been proving for decades that this works. Why do more work when you could do less? I think more about do less work than more work is that we have way less people than we used to have, and then we have to do the same work with less people. So the next thing, since we can bring in more people, is going to be how to lighten the workload to give the sites, like you said, some relief. And technology is part of the answer. I won't say it's entirely the answer, but probably is part of the answer. So I'm very, very great insight right there, and I completely agree with you. I also think while you were talking, I was thinking about hospitality has short stays, a day to 3 days a week at a time. typically their customers. Our customers in multifamily, they stay 6 months, 9 months, 12 months, 7 years at a time. I think just because they had such a short window to prove that their worth to their customers, so they could have them as a return customer, makes them get the sense of urgency more than we do. Once we get people in the door, we kind of know that our residents are going to be stuck with us for at least 6 months, 9 months, a year, and we just kind of, once we move them in, we kick back and relax. Not to necessarily say that we ignore them, but it's not the same sense of urgency. Do you agree? Do you think that that's probably part of the challenge, to have the teams have the same sense of urgency throughout a residence list and perform the same level of service throughout the whole entire 9, 10, 12 month 24-month lease versus just 2 or 3 days window?
Oh, for sure. I definitely agree. And also, someone stays at a hotel for a couple of nights, they have they don't have a great experience. They can talk to someone and get some of their money refunded. When you have someone that is living in a home that they're not necessarily, maybe there's a work order that wasn't resolved in a timely manner, or their move-in wasn't as smooth as they wanted. I think sometimes the residents choose not to say anything because they know that they're going to be there for X number of months or years, and they don't want to. It's easier for a guest in a hotel to kind of raise hell, for lack of a better term, because they don't ever have to go back to that hotel. Whereas a resident, that's their home. And also, I think, a lot of people in the industry still, it's a home to people. It's a home to their residents. So they sometimes can expect the resident to understand, oh, well, we're not going to get to your work order right away because we have X, Y, and Z. And you shouldn't have such high expectations. Problem is people's expectations are changing. And now that, there's so much technology out in the world and everything is, at our fingertips, I can have food delivered to me in 20 minutes. So I expect that, a request I'm putting in for a work order is not going to take a week. 20 years ago, I might have been okay with that same work taking a week, but not today.
That's you're making a great point about expectation. It's absolutely true. The expectations are going up.
Yes.
Just like also probably prices are going up.
The rents.
That's probably another reason, not just the times that we're in, where everything's so within reach, right? 20 minutes, you get your meal. But they're also thinking, well, our rent keeps going up very fast, that we got to get faster service, and then, better. So that's completely understandable. It's part of the human behavior. My next question, Nicole, is one of the questions that I always ask my guests. What do you read? What are your favorite reads currently, and what are your all-time favorite reads, fiction and non-fiction books?
Ooh, that is a good question. So my most recent nonfiction book that I really enjoyed was Effortless. I read it earlier this year, and I feel like I read so much that I don't always retain as much as I wish I did. But one of the takeaways that I had from that book was not to focus so much on perfectionism and also overthinking, processes. How can I get this particular task done in the most efficient amount of time and the most efficient amount of effort? Definitely, it's not about cutting corners. It's more about streamlining and not being so focused on how things have previously been done, or how you've always done them, or this is the task list that we've always done to get from A to B. It's more taking a minute to actually think, okay, why do I need to get to B? What is it about B that, we need to get there? And is it really A to B, or is it maybe C to B? Or, is there a different path with less effort? And then on the perfectionism front, I think a lot of times people, especially in management roles, can be so focused on, okay, this, we have to do it this exact way. And this is the result we need to get. I think being a little bit more curious and trying to understand why we are trying to get whatever accomplished and how to do it in the least amount of time. Because the more steps you add to any task, the more chances there are for mistakes, failures, missteps. And I really enjoyed that book because it definitely helped me kind of rethink how I approach just, the day-to-day property management. And then a fiction book that I read recently, The Midnight Library, was a very interesting read. The premise is that a woman attempts to kill herself and finds herself in this midnight library. Her life is falling apart. Everything is not going the way that she expected it to go. And she finds in this library that she can find all these other alternate lives, and she can flip to a page and, pop into that life. And I won't give away the ending, but it was a very good read. And even though it was fiction, it did speak to me about just life in general. And I think human expectations and just how to deal with disappointment. And yeah, it was a good read.
Thank you for sharing. I need to check those books out myself. I haven't read them yet.
They're good.
So, Nicole, my next question for you is, can you think of a situation where a failure or apparent failure that you had helped you turn it down the road into a success? Or it was a stepping stone for future success?
Yeah. The first thing that comes to mind is definitely my jump from hospitality into property management. Obviously, for anyone listening that's ever been laid off, there's a lot of feelings that go into that. And it's mostly not good feelings unless you hated your job. But I enjoyed my job. So it was a really hard time for me, both personally and professionally. And it felt almost insurmountable because, again, in my mind, I was going to be in this industry forever. And now everything had changed with the industry. Not everything, but a lot of things have changed. And where did I fit in? And, how could I continue where I thought I was going to go? And now looking back, I think it's the best thing that ever happened to me. I thought about going back to hospitality a couple years in to my career in property management because I definitely missed the hotel discount, that's for sure. But decided not to. And now, obviously, COVID 2020 hindsight, I'm very glad that I did not go back to hospitality because I would have been in the same position again. So, that was definitely a failure that turned into a super successful career in multifamily and a lot of really amazing people that I've met along the way.
Our industry, the multifamily industry, I always think about Hotel California. You could always check in, but you could never leave.
You can never leave. Nope.
It's the same story as I have, really. Even though I do something a little bit different right now, I'm still very connected with a multifamily family, with the environment, with all the professionals, and I still have a tremendous passion for the industry.
Yeah, it's a great industry.
Nicole, if you would think of one piece of advice only for young students, college students or high school students that don't really intend to follow to go to the college, but they're ready to enter the real world, get a job, get a place on their own. What would be one piece of advice that you would have for the younger generation?
Well, and this is definitely related to multifamily, but I do think it spans other industries as well. Never underestimate the importance of relationships. One of my first regionals in the multifamily industry told me, don't ever burn any bridges. If you don't like someone, keep it to yourself. Talk to your friends about it. Talk to your partner about it, but don't ever burn bridges. Our particular industry is so small and so tight knit, even though it's not really when you think about it. But to take that even a step further, it does all come back to relationships. Relationships with past people that you've worked with that end up coming to work for you again because they really enjoyed working with you. Relationships with clients that decide to change management because you did such an awesome job for them. Relationships with just other industry connections that, I scratch your back, you scratch mine. They could become a really awesome vendor partner. There's always going to be people that you don't get along with. That's life. And you don't necessarily have to work with them forever, but you just never know. The leasing consultant that I manage today could one day be my vice president. And it really does all boil down to relationships and how well you're able to manage interpersonal relationships.
This is a great advice, and it's really close to my heart. I'm a firm believer in networking.
Yes.
I am a networker. Like, I'm actually seeking opportunities to network with people, to meet with people, to help people connect with each other. There's just so much value in it. I don't want to, for anyone watching, I don't want you to necessarily think that there's a financial component to it. If you try this, just even for a short period of time, you will see that the feeling of being fulfilled and being able to help other human beings or help them connect with others, help them connect with opportunities. It's unmatched. There's no price tag that you could put to that, and it goes a long way. Human nature is that people tend to reciprocate. It's not that you're gonna help someone so they owe you something. There is no such a thing. It's the universe. It's the karma. If you do good, good will come back to you in other forms, not from the same person necessarily, but networking and relationships. Absolutely, for me, they're basically the number one, probably determining factor of success later in life. So definitely, I'm very passionate about this, and thank you for sharing.
Yeah, you are a great connector. So I figured you would like that one.
Thank you. Nicole, if you were to look in your background about 3 to 5 years back, what belief, behavior, or habit has helped you the most to improve your life?
So I read a book, and I'm not going to say the full title because there is an expletive in it, but it's By Yourself, the Blank Lilies by Tara Schuster. And it is a book about habit building and forming habits that help you live better and be a better person, be a better human, be a better friend. And I didn't take every single habit that she had in the book, but I did take a lot of them. One being journaling, something I do every day. She also had an exercise in there where you write down what you hope people will say about you at your funeral, and you tape those things up on a wall or a door somewhere and look at them every day and make changes to your life so that those things are said at your funeral. And just a really strong focus on self-care. I mean, that's kind of the overarching theme of her book, is just, giving yourself a better life and a better mindset. And I think that's really helped me, obviously personally, but it's also helped me professionally, because kind of to dial back into the relationship thing, as as someone that manages people, I'm sure everyone listening has had a boss that they despise, and they probably remember that person's name and can bring it up, at the flick of a switch. But we also have had people that have really poured into us and made us want to strive to be that same type of boss. I think the more you take care of yourself and the more you see your teams as people and humans that have lives outside of work and feelings and, families and things that are happening good and bad in their lives, it helps you to be more empathetic and to communicate better with them. The more you take care of yourself, the better you can pour into other people. And so that book really changed a lot of, it even changed my relationship with working out. Like, I used to be one of, a typical woman, like working out, to try to get to a certain size. And her take on working out is like, move your body because you can move your body and it brings you joy. And now I don't even really weigh myself anymore, but I work out every day, and it helps me process the stress of our industry, and it helps me feel better about myself. And I do things that I enjoy doing, and I don't feel like I'm, punishing myself because I ate that piece of cake last night. So that book really just gave me a lot of really good life skills that I hope to pass on to my kids, and I hope, to keep up with through the years. And journaling, for one, has been really, really helpful because it helps me process, all the different things that go into life in general, but specifically our industry.
Very inspiring. Thank you for sharing with us. People tend to talk a lot about success, and we also look at successful people, and I guess we see the final product of someone becoming successful, but a lot of times we tend to forget that there's struggle along the way. This is not a linear path. It's up and down a lot until you get there. There's a lot of, blood, sweat, and tears behind success. There's a lot of failure. And there's times when you're so overwhelmed, you're so lonely, you feel like it's the end for you. Like, you don't see an end inside, like you don't see an improvement. You don't know what to do. You're overwhelmed. And you don't know what to do. So one of the questions, a question I want to ask you, if you recall a situation where when you feel like you're losing focus, you become overwhelmed, what are the things that help you get back on track?
Yeah, that's a good question. Definitely, I think self-care is so important, for sure. I am a to-do list queen, so I love having a to-do list and being able to, check things off the list. But in our industry, there's days that are, I don't want to say easy breezy, but there are easy days, and then there's days where it feels like, the entire building's crumbling on top of you. And then we all have lives outside of just our normal day jobs. And life can sometimes be crumbling down on you as well. I personally am very type A, so kind of back to the to-do list. I do that both personally and professionally. And I think what's helped me that I didn't necessarily do when I was younger is really giving myself some grace and not, I don't want to say not stressing, because that seems obviously so easy to say and not so easy to do. But I had a day yesterday that I felt like everything was coming at me, and I had to remind myself, like, I will actually talk to myself and say, you will get through this. One thing at a time. You cannot do everything. And that's the same thing that I tell my teams when they're calling and they're like, well, this is happening, that's happening, and this happened. And it's like, okay, take a breath, take a deep breath. If you need to block the office, go for a walk, do it, come back, and then let's prioritize and figure out what needs to be tackled first. Nothing can't be repaired. Even, the worst things that I've seen in this industry, fires in units, deaths in units, employees walking out mid-job. I mean, nothing can't be repaired. And I always remind myself of that, even when it feels like everything is ending and crumbling.
Whether you're at the top of the mountain or on the very, you hit the bottom, they should pass.
Yes. The only constant is change in this life. So don't get too comfortable.
Well, I could think of another two more: taxes.
Oh yeah, and death. Those darn taxes.
Nicole, great conversation. I would love to keep going. Unfortunately, our conversation is about to come to an end. I would love to give you the opportunity to say something that you wish we would cover during this episode, or a question I didn't ask, something that you would like to add for our audience in closing.
I just really love our industry, and I'm really hopeful that in the coming years, as we see more technology spring up, I hope that we all collectively work to make our industry better. I think we have a lot of room for growth, a lot of room for improvement. I am very passionate about our industry, and I'm hoping that future generations want to join us and don't get scared away by some of the horror stories. But I think it's truly a team effort, and it takes everyone. It takes on site, it takes corporate, it takes vendors, it takes owners. And I'm really passionate about it. And I think that we have a great opportunity ahead of us to really change the multifamily housing industry and the housing industry in general for the better, which is such an awesome opportunity.
That's a great way to close this episode. Very positive way, and also very hopeful to the future. Yeah. Nicole, I wanted to thank you so much for coming, for sharing your thoughts with me and with the audience. I hope to have you back soon here, because there's way many more questions that I wanted to ask you, but due to the time constraints, I couldn't, and I had the opportunity. So hopefully we'll do a second episode down the road if you would like to come back.
Yes, absolutely. I'd love to.
Thank you very much again for joining us today. Everybody, thank you for watching. This is Multifamily Chronicles. I'm your host, Adrian Danila. This was episode number 19. I hope to see you back here soon. Have a great day.